Welcome to Changing the Game, where we share leadership insights and inspiration from female professionals who are making a difference in their industry.
Hello, everyone. My name is Duren. I am the host of Changing the Game, but today, more importantly, I'm chatting with Laura Barnard. Laura is the founder of BREAKTHRU and has spent time in leadership roles at iconic brands like Haribo and Wrigley. She even recently authored a book for her company, BREAKTHRU. Before beginning her career journey, she played Division I basketball at Harvard and served as team captain. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you for having me, Jordan. It's great to see you again.
It's great to see you again, too. And I just got to throw this out. Shout out to Shauna Griffiths again for introducing me to another amazing female leader for the show. She's definitely made a lot of connections.
She is a super connector.
She really is. Yeah. She really is. But I love it. Laura, I'm really excited to have you here today. Really excited about your background, especially being a company founder. I think this message that you have for our listeners is really going to resonate with a lot of them today. So I like to have guests kick it off at the beginning of their journey. So I'd love if you could share a little bit more about your background. So, you studied psychology and basketball, or played basketball at Harvard.
Yeah, I studied basketball too, mostly because I was sitting on the bench the whole time. But other than that,
it's kind of one and the same, right? You're like, hey,
I was a student. Exactly.
Yeah, it's in there somewhere.
Well, I will say I did learn a lot from most of what I know from basketball. So I was definitely a student of the game. And I was, grew up in the Chicago area, big athlete, any sport I could really get access to. Always like rushing home from school, throwing my book bag down and going out into the ball yard and playing literally any sport. I played flag football, hockey, basketball, baseball, but basketball really became my passion, and I was able to be fortunate enough to play basketball at Harvard University and study psychology, and that was really where the foundation was set for, I think, me as a leader, as a person, and kind of really great network booster, obviously, to have so many great connections from that great school and my teammates from those days. When I graduated from Harvard back now over 20 years ago, it's hard to imagine. I had really no clue what I wanted to do professionally. I had thought a little bit about psychology. I did not meet my dream of playing professionally in the basketball world. And I really went into business sort of trying to figure out what my identity was from a professional standpoint. And I began, my first job out of college was probably the worst job I had, but I learned a ton. I was a stockbroker for a large bank because that's a lot of my peers were going into the banking industry. And I thought that's what I should do. Turns out I was not a fit for that industry. It was very much a boiler room and cold calling, but I learned a lot about sales. I learned a lot about the financial markets. I learned a lot about kind of that entrepreneurial spirit that you need to grow your book of business, which I'm living today for sure. Nice. And went from that experience to another job that I thought I should do. There's a theme here. And that was going back home to work for my family's home building business here in Chicago. And it was kind of a general management training type of program to see if this was something that I would spend the rest of my life doing. And it turns out that wasn't a fit. And then I looked back and I said, I had this great reset, which was going back to business school back in 2006. And that was kind of where the housing market, the bubble burst. The business I was working for was no longer. So I had to sort of reinvent, figure out what I really wanted to do for my career. And that's where I discovered the profession of brand management and marketing. And that was for me like a really direct application of psychology, a lot of consumer insights and positioning work and storytelling and sort of connecting products with people and trying to understand human behavior, why people make purchasing decisions, all that good stuff. And I was fortunate to get a internship with the Mars Wrigley global organization that has a big presence here in Chicago. And that really started what became about a 15-year career in brand management and marketing, mostly in the product space. So mostly in the food and candy industry. And that was kind of the start of my climbing the ladder, which I thought that, again, is what I should do, get to that head of marketing role and my life would be set, right? And I was the head of marketing for Haribo. As you mentioned, they make some great gummy bears and big German company. And it turns out the higher up that I got in management and in leadership, kind of the heat was turned up a little bit in terms of, feeling that pressure of often being the only female at the leadership table, most often the only LGBTQ community member at the leadership table. And I kind of felt like I didn't quite fit into leadership. It seemed like I was trying to kind of morph to fit into these different cultures, and it really didn't feel great. And I was kind of, hitting my head against some of those proverbial ceilings. And so I jumped off the ladder in 2019, really with this energy and this passion for trying to solve some of the problems that I experienced as an executive, sort of rising up in corporate America, trying to eliminate some of the stereotypes, the bias, the discrimination that I experienced, and for sure some colleagues experienced, and I know a lot of folks out there probably have experienced, and helping people sort of break through those barriers that they were facing as they advanced, and looking at it through the lens of leadership to say, okay, is there something missing? Is there a gap in leadership development where people like me don't feel like they fit in, don't feel like they're understood, don't feel like they can be themselves? And the idea for Breakthrough was sort of sparked by that, trying to change the game up a little bit from a leadership development perspective, and bring in the things that I know and I'm really good at, which is kind of the psychology of leadership, some theories and principles about branding, even from a personal standpoint, how do we brand ourselves, and bringing those lenses together to help now many leaders break through those same barriers.
Yeah, Laura, I love the story of your journey. There's so many cool themes and also some tangents I want to go down with your story. I want to take a step back though. One thing that you mentioned as you were talking about your career journey is there is this concept of doing what you think you should do. And I think that that's something I see candidates, at least with Shift Group, struggle with, especially people that are transitioning out of one industry to another, or their athletic or military service career to a totally new space. They're often approaching this new chapter of their life with, well, I think this is what I should do because it's, what people have told me I should do because I'm good at X or whatever it is. And I would just like to know some of your thoughts behind that. Either maybe if you had advice to those candidates that are facing the what I should do kind of predicament, or maybe how you felt during those times. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that and maybe speak to those listeners.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think these moments in our life where you feel like sometimes you're out of obligation, that you need to do things. And there's real life pressures that happen. We're like, I should work to earn a living to put a house over my head. Like, yes, we should do these things, but thinking about it from as you're navigating those moments, like when you feel that sort of tension or that twinge of like, am I doing this? What is my motivation to do this thing, or to take this role, or to make this decision? And having that self-awareness in the moment where you feel that twinge, or that sort of indication of, is this something I really am wanting to do? I'm motivated to do it, or do I feel like I should do it, or I ought to do it because someone else has done it that way, or someone told me that it needs to be done that way? So that when you feel those moments of tension, noticing them, right, and being self-aware. Okay, what is this that I'm experiencing? For me, it was feeling like I should go work for a bank because that's what my peers were doing. That pressure that was coming from the outside. It wasn't something that was intrinsically motivating to me. It was coming from the outside. So I think about the decisions that I've made that have been guided by more intrinsic motivation, like what is going to be rewarding to me, what is going to help me feel like I'm at my best, I'm thriving, I'm self-actualizing, right? Versus those external forces of, okay, I'm doing this because of it's a higher pay level, or I'm doing this because it's a sexier title and promotion, or I'm doing this because it's an industry that I feel like either family or peer pressure wise that I should be in, and just noticing those moments, and then coming back to, okay, what is actually intrinsically motivating to me? And intrinsic motivation is something it's not as readily noticed and expressed as like a character trait, but it's something you have to kind of have some self-reflection on to say, okay, what is it that drives me? What my thinking, my decisions, my behaviors, and when am I at my best? And for me, like my motivation, I think, I was motivated and very curious inherently to learn about psychology. I always loved psychology, and like the psychology of leadership and teams, and being on a basketball team and being on a role player first, and then the captain of that team, and learning from an amazing head coach at Harvard, and kind of seeing that style of leadership. I was motivated by that, the whole thing, right? The whole aspect of it, from the teamwork and from the leadership perspective. And so that's always been something I've been passionate and curious about, and then being motivated to actually do something towards that passion. And that's where, kind of listening to that. And it takes time to figure out what that is sometimes, but you know, when you're feeling like obligated to do something, okay, and kind of stopping in that moment and say, what is motivating my decision right now?
Yeah, I totally agree. And you mentioned it takes time to figure that out. I
Yeah.
would almost argue, and you had mentioned like when you were working as a stockbroker, maybe it wasn't
Yep.
the role for you, but you learned all those skills that you now use as a founder, business
Yes.
development skills. So I would almost argue that yes, it takes time. And so all those roles that you were in that maybe weren't the one for you or the
Yep.
right path at the time, they still taught you invaluable skills to put you on the right path.
Yes, exactly. And I think, I mean, that's, there's times where, there's things that are hard and that require work and effort. And that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. That could be a really positive thing. And I think back to those days where I'm, sitting and cold calling and I'm like, why am I doing this? It was towards the end of like getting the skill set, getting the experience that you do carry with you. And so there's times where you're like, you may be questioning, why am I in this place? But it is adding to your experience set for sure. And kind of rounding you out in terms of understanding what's out there, right? You got to see what's out there first.
Absolutely. And we, at Shift, we specialize in some of those sales roles like SDR, BDR, a lot of outbound prospecting, cold calling. And I try to explain that exact sentiment to candidates I work with, like, hey, this isn't going to be your job forever, but
Right.
it's to teach you the skills for you to succeed in the next chapter. So I
Exactly.
love that. That was like gold, you saying that for me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I didn't know it at the time, but it definitely, it built up like a fortitude in me that, was important, and the ability to handle, failure, rejection, adversity. Like you learn that in sports. And I definitely learned that in like the financial and selling world. Like you're going to have a lot of failures, a lot of no's, but when you get to that place where you get to a yes, or get to a positive response, it feels all the sweeter because you've gone through the hard stuff to get to it.
So true. So true. It just prepares you for when you're ready for that next right role.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Laura, I love it. I want to talk more about BREAKTHRU. So you mentioned, you were in these leadership positions, Haribo, Wrigley, among others, and you felt like you were one of the only in these places. And so BREAKTHRU is really focused to help underrepresented leaders, excuse me.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about the program more? And I guess what impact have you seen it make on participants so far?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. I think, start with like our why, like our mission really is I'll talk about this concept of advancing identity equity, which is kind of a academic term, but all it means is essentially is opening up like the leadership table to a diverse set of backgrounds, perspectives, identities that can really enhance innovation, collaboration, decision making. Like when we have diversity at that leadership table, good things happen, and there's a lot of stats that prove that. Even though there's a lot of headwinds against this currently in the current atmosphere, or current political climate, I should say. But we think about giving people first this belief that they are a leader, and this is the first barrier. Most 70% of folks in the workforce today do not see themselves as leaders. So we're trying to get that mindset shift and that belief in the individual that they can lead, and then give them the tools, the strategy, the approach to activate their leadership in a powerful and impactful way. So we are looking at empowering individuals and groups of leaders to lead authentically. That's ultimately what we're trying to do towards that mission of advancing, that identity equity, all different identities at that leadership table. And so what we do typically, we work on a program basis with organizations whereby we introduce the selected group of cohorts, and sometimes a cohort of leaders is a certain level within the company. It could be director level and up. It could be new hires. It could be employee resource group leaders. So the company will select the target of who they want to give access to this program to, and we work with them first as a group to say, okay, who are we collectively? What is BREAKTHRU? What is this model of leadership development that we use? Give them access to kind of what to expect, right? Basic orientation. Then we take each individual cohort member through the really interesting, like a deep discovery meeting. So we would, meet with them for an hour, just real basic stuff. To listen to their story, listen to their purpose, mission, vision, values, try to unpack, peel back that onion to get to their motivation. What is motivating them as a leader? What are their aspirations? What are their fears, right? Kind of get to know them quickly. and take in other great inputs like their resume, like their LinkedIn, like any articles or features that they've done. And we really build up a big knowledge estate for that individual that enables us to create a leadership strategy that's totally custom for them. And we use our model to assess what is their leadership style, their leadership type, and that helps us guide how they activate their brand as a leader. So for I'm a connector and a visionary. You may be a trailblazer. So how we put our brand out to the world is pass through that filter of that leadership type. So we give each person that sort of fingerprint, bespoke leadership strategy that will help guide them per their goals for the company. And then we bring everybody back together at the end who's gone through the program and say, okay, look at this from a bird's eye view. What are the dynamics of these different leadership types that are on this team? If we have a lot of people in one quadrant and not a lot in another, what are the implications of that for the company? So it gets into team dynamics, which makes it really compelling, I think, because for me, leadership is not it's not a single definition. It's not a one person thing. It's a team sport, right? It's leadership is about everybody, activating and thriving and being at their best and influencing decision making and having that sense of agency and ownership throughout the team. If we can sort of spread that out and sort of have more of a bottoms up approach to leadership versus a single top down mentality about it, we can get a lot done. And that is what we see contributes to really thriving organizations.
Yeah. This model is really unique. And in our first call, you had mentioned that this is a lot different than the traditional tests that a lot of companies do. Like they do strengths finders or Myers-Briggs and things like that. So how does this differ and why is it better?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've taken, I think, every single leadership assessment tool under the sun, and I had a lot through my corporate career, no shortage of, access to these things and coaching and all this good stuff. So none of these things are bad or nefarious, but some of these assessment tools are very dated and they're antiquated and they're sort of dipped in past patterns of leadership. And what did leadership of 50 years or 100 years ago look like? It looks very different than it does today. Demographics are changing. This next generation's coming into leadership roles. And it's definitely, there's not one single definition of leadership or set of traits that define who is a good leader. We want to sort of open up expand the aperture, open up the definition, and say, okay, there's room for different styles of leadership, not just the authoritarian, assertive, aggressive, dominant leader of the past and unfortunately sometimes still of the present, but we want to open up that possibility set to say, let's think about leadership differently. Let's define it differently. And our tool is meant to be more dynamic to say, you're not, with the Myers-Briggs, for example, it's kind of like a set it and forget it. You are this type and it follows you during your whole career. With this tool, the SLE, it's very much context driven. So like, what is required of you as a leader in this moment? So for me as a founder, my requirements as a leader are very different than they were back when I was a brand manager working for a 20 person team. I could be a connector back then and get things done as part of that collaborative. And today I need to stretch into the more visionary space, to put ideas out there, to write a book, to speak about leadership, in the ways that I get the opportunity to do. So it's more about a flex over time. And it's more designed to expand our thinking versus to box us in or categorize us into a type. It's really a jumping off point for how you express your leadership out to the world. And that's where we think about it being more inclusive than some of these past models and more expansive.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like that you had mentioned some of these older ways put you in a leadership box. Like you have to be assertive, you have to be aggressive or ultra competitive. And I totally agree with that sentiment. Like we work with companies that want strong female talent. And I think the question for a lot of companies out there could also be, well, are you open to welcoming different types of leadership into your company to attract that strong female talent? Yep. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when you look at, that senior leadership table, who's at the table, and is that reflective of the pipeline you want to bring in? And oftentimes, the numbers are still, there's still significant, gender gaps, racial gaps, et cetera, that exist at the higher levels. And so it's kind of, we need to change on both ends. At the top of the senior leadership, having that identity, equity, and that diversity of folks at the leadership table, and then helping that inform the pipeline into the company for sure.
Yeah. And you had mentioned that 70%, I think was the number you said, 70% of all people don't see themselves as leaders, which that it's wild to me. So I would love to know if there was someone listening right now that doesn't see themselves as a leader or fitting that traditional leadership stereotype. What advice would you offer to them to embrace their uniqueness and their unique leadership style?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with, I think self-awareness, like trying to figure, like, know who you are, sort of deeply in terms of, your strengths, your attributes, kind of what lights you up, what are you passionate about, what change in the world do you want to see, and kind of regardless of your position or your title or your company, just kind of who you are as a person. And so anything that accelerates self-reflection or self-awareness, I'm a big fan of, big proponent of. And that's, part of the reason why we developed the leadership type model. And that's where, on our site, leadershiptypes.com, for example, you can take one of the self-assessment survey, and it's a really good first step to start to understand, okay, what is my style as a leader? Where am I charting, if you will? And that helps get sort of a framework for thinking about how I can begin to lead more effectively. But I think it really starts with just getting clearer and ask, like, again, I think about peeling back the onion, like getting to the core of, like, okay, who am I? What is motivating to me? What are the conditions of my success? Where and when am I at my best? And understanding that and try to replicate that when you make a choice about where to work or where to spend your time, that you can be that best version of yourself and bring that full identity to that space, not have to, hide parts of yourself or cordon off different parts of yourself, but that you can bring that full identity into the space where you work. And that's where they're going to get the best out of you, and you're going to feel the best.
Yeah. Laura, I think what you do is so cool. I think I personally find such fulfillment out of helping others reach their potential or help them go after their goals. And so I just see a lot of that in what you do, which is it's just so cool. And I would love to know, when you were in your climbing the corporate ladder, like you said, and you were climbing the ladder, and you had mentioned in our last conversation, actually, the missing rung, right?
Yeah,
like
the broken rung. Yeah.
Yes. Can you actually talk about that a little bit? The missing rung in that analogy for you, or that metaphor?
Yeah. Well, it's one thing. I did not make the term up. I will find the proper, the thought leader who coined the phrase, but it's a pretty well discussed, like, sort of phenomenon in the human resources space, and especially in, like, the the diversity, equity, inclusion space, where they're, like, trying to assess, like, what is the problem? Why does there's this, as you climb the ladder up into higher levels of leadership, it gets a lot of white cisgender men are at the top, right? And everyone else is sort of, underrepresented. So there's that, still 10% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. Just take that stat, and it gets worse for the more underrepresented you are, the numbers get way worse. So there's still that significant gap. So what is happening at the level just below, like the C-suite, for example, like that VP or senior VP or director level? Is there a problem there that's preventing people from advancing? And we've solved some of the entry level problems of increasing diversity in the workforce. So, like, the first couple rungs of the ladder are accessible to everybody, and the talent pool and the initial entry level pipeline looks pretty diverse. But the higher up you go, the numbers just drop off. And so this idea that there's some broken rung on that ladder closer to the top, whereby, for women, for example, for every 2 women that go above the director level, one is just leaving, like, basically being forced out of corporate America. So there's this, like, up or out, and it's hitting underrepresented, like, women and underrepresented groups more hard. And there's a lot of theories of why that is, but it's something, I think, part of what we do is trying to, like, strengthen that rung, right, to give them confidence, clarity to stay in the game, to advance their careers, to assert their leadership, to go for that promotion, right? Not think, I'm not going to put my hat in the ring for that C-level position because I'm not qualified. No, to give them, sort of build them up in that way to get ready for that next level, so that we can sort of address that broken rung.
Yeah. Was there a moment then in your career, as you're climbing that ladder and you're seeing that broken rung, was there a moment in your career where you were like, I'm going to make a difference here. I'm going to start BREAKTHRU. Like, this is.
Yeah, there was. I mean, I think back to like, when I stopped, like, jumping off, like, did I jump off the ladder, or was the rung broken? I think it was a little bit of, I saw the broken rung and I'm like, I'm out of here. Like, I left, not quite knowing what I would do next, but knowing that I was compelled to do something different. And I think this is, like, very small story, but like when I was still like consulting in that old world, I'll say in the corporate America world, it was during the Final Four for women's basketball, and I was watching like in a little screen on my computer the press conferences for the women's Final Four. And Coach Muffet McGraw from Notre Dame, who's two-time national champion, legendary coach, gave this speech during the press conference around like the need for more, like we need more visible women role models. Like we need to look up the ladder and see women. We need to see women in charge of, of teams, of athletic departments, of organizations and politics. And if you don't have those folks up there, people emerging don't, if you can see it, you can be it type of thing. But if you don't see it, it's harder to become that for the next generation. So I was really inspired by her words, and like that hit me. It was sort of like, all right, I have to do something like right now. It's like I quit my old job and start something new. But it had been building up in me, just experiencing the misogyny and bureaucracy and like the different isms in the workplace. I just kind of had been fed up a little bit. And then Buffett's speech like put me over the edge, and I was like, I got to do something about this. But so I'll tell that story often, but I do, I was obsessed with Notre Dame basketball as a kid. And then to have her like, her words come back to me as an adult, I was like, all right, I got to do something, coach. So it was a moment.
That is iconic. I remember that speech too. Yeah. The minute you started talking about it, I was like, oh yeah, that's at the forefront. I do remember that moment too.
Yeah.
That is so cool. What advice would you give to someone who maybe is considering starting their own business or making the leap and saying, I can be a company founder, I can make meaningful change? What would you tell them if there's any hesitancy there?
Yeah. I mean, so the connector in me is like, find folks who have gone through this experience, and short of, finding a mentor, because I think that's like easy to say, harder to actually do in a meaningful way, but finding folks who you can talk to who have gone through and had like the real world experiences of it. And I think, I'm fortunate. My wife had been a founder of 2 previous companies. So I had like an in-house expert about starting a company, and my parents are entrepreneurs. My grandparents are entrepreneurs. So I have a lot of folks I could, tap into and ask questions of, kind of safe places to ask, for support. And I think about just using your network and getting access to people who have had some experience doing it and kind of giving you the do's and don'ts or the watch outs. And I think about too, like I had a teacher, professor in business school. It was an entrepreneurial class, which, it's hard to teach entrepreneurship, but it was kind of the theories of like what to expect. And it was something that I'll remember that I would share back with this audience is like, the idea is 1% of it. Like the execution is 99%. So you can have a great idea, but you got to be willing to, do the planning, put in the work, hustle, selling, all these things that are like part of the actual putting it into life that are so much more of it. So if you can be disciplined about that, have that good work ethic, but towards that end, that mission that you're seeking is really, really important. If you're compelled and motivated by that mission, the work doesn't feel like bad work. It feels like really good work.
Yeah, I love it. Laura, this has been such an amazing episode. We only have a couple minutes left here.
Okay.
So I just have a couple more questions I really want to get to here. The first is at Shift Group, myself, I know my coworkers, I know the candidates I work with, sometimes we really closely mend our identity to the work that we do. So I would just like to know, what fills your cup outside of work?
Yes. So everything kind of roads all point to basketball. So outside of work, I still play basketball in an old ladies league here outside of Chicago that I love. And I'm an old lady, so I can say that. But I still play with a great group of women that get together once or twice a week, which is pretty awesome in the evenings, and just play pickup. And it's pure joy. It's so fun. I just try not to get hurt every time because I have been accident prone in my life, my career. And then now kind of being able to coach our daughters in basketball and soccer, different sports, but being a youth sports coach, I just love coaching the kids. And that's really keeps us busy most of the evenings, but that's been really an amazing experience. And my coach at Harvard would tell us, when you are done playing, like you have to coach your sons or daughters, like you must give back to the sport. And I'll show up to the coaches meetings, and there are not a lot of females there. There's mostly a lot of the male caregivers who are there. or, and we do need more women in coaching, especially like at the youth level and coaching boys and girls. I think it's really positive to have that exposure and just that experience. But I've loved doing that a lot.
That's amazing.
Yep.
I love it, giving back to the sport and the community.
Yep.
My final question for you, Laura, is just what's next for you, or what's next for BREAKTHRU? What do you want to share?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's always thinking about what's next. I think it's like we evolve and change as a company every like 6 months or so, like we reinvent. So we are really focused on these programs for organizations kind of with a team approach to leadership. So we're working for many years, we were focused on just individuals, helping them, craft their leadership strategies and their brands. And now looking to find future focused organizations that are really investing in their people and that next generation of emerging leaders. So groups of emerging leaders, that's kind of who we're focusing on, and companies who are supporting that next generation are really our focal point. And I think we've had great success with our first book on sort of discovering your leadership type, but taking that to that same place. Like, what does this mean for teams? Sort of like the team leadership aspect. So there's something cooking, I hope, around sort of the team version of the book to get people thinking about interpersonal dynamics, not just, self-awareness is the first step, but then getting it to see other people and use the thinking to help folks work together better.
Yeah. Awesome, Laura. Thank you so much. I'm so excited for you. This conversation was wonderful. I know our audience is certainly going to really appreciate it and your time. So where can listeners connect with you on LinkedIn or?
Yes, please. Yeah. LinkedIn is I spend most of my downtime on LinkedIn, but please connect with me on LinkedIn. And then if you go to our website, letsbreakthru.com, and breakthrough is THRU. So check out letsbreakthru.com and learn more about, our programs, and you can get a link to the book there as well to access the Leadership Types book, and a lot of great free resources on the site or ways to engage with us. So.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Laura. I really appreciate it. This was
wonderful. Thank you, Jordan. Great job.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And thank you everyone for tuning in.
I say this because interviewing is hard, and you're a pro. You did a great job.
Oh, thank you. I love doing it. So I'm happy that I've helped make it easier for you.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Okay, we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Okay, bye. Thank you.